What if you could walk away from Wall Street and still build $50,000 a month in income in under 2 years? Our guest today didn't just do it, he's helping thousands of others do the same. He was a certified financial planner who realized the system was broken, and he left it behind to build true financial freedom. If you've ever felt like you're trading time for money, this episode will flip your thinking and maybe your future. Let's dive in.
We have attorneys come in and teach them how to ask the greatest question. Greatest question. I'll give you, this is my favorite one about all times. If I invest in any project, I start off with this. It's the Iceberg Question for every investment deal is,
welcome to Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions, the place to learn how to fund, scale, exit, and massively profit as an angel investor or entrepreneur. Brought to you by the Angel Investors Network. And now, here's your host, Jeff Barnes.
Welcome back to another episode of Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions. I'm your host, Jeff Barnes, and we're joined today with Russ Morgan. Russ is with Wealth Without Wall Street. So, Russ, how are you doing today?
Jeff, I'm great, man. Thank you so much for having me on the call today.
Absolutely. Really looking forward to it. Like I was talking about before we got started here, lots of great questions and things to dive into here. But before we get into all the meat of the conversation, why don't you tell folks a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, so my business partner and I run a company called Wealth Without Wall Street. Our objective is to help 1 million people become financially free. We define financial freedom as when your passive income exceeds your monthly expenses. And based upon my background of being a certified financial planner, back in the old days, like our company is Wealth Without Wall Street, I can point fingers and throw, daggers at Wall Street because I was on that side for almost 11 years. And I realized that my job was back in those days, was to separate people from their money, not to create passive income, ultimately create income for me. And we've talked about this before, prior to press and record, that's what that world unfortunately is about earning fees. And there are good people in the business, but that's just the way it is. And so we built this company starting back in January 2016, focused on how do we help people who want to become financially free get there faster. And it's about teaching them how to become better investors, where to store cash, how to evaluate deals, how to actually truly be an investor and understand what your investor DNA is. All of these things were things that I was having to learn because I didn't grow up with a lot of money. I grew up in a household, my parents divorced when I was young. My mom was a school teacher. My dad was a contractor. So I got into the financial industry to figure out how money was made. And when I started realizing that my top clients were business owners and investing in different types of strategies that weren't on Wall Street, that led me down this road. And I've been like hunting and doing everything I can to educate myself. And for the last 5 years, my business partner and I actually share with the world every single month our personal passive income report. And just before I got on here, I was recording the May 2025 report as well.
That's awesome, man. I love that. So we have a lot of synergies, I'd say, here and overlap in what our lives look like. When I was a kid, my dad was a self-employed, owned a hardwood flooring business, was doing really well some years and really terribly other years. Ended up going through some hardship. We ended up homeless for a while, so we did not grow with the money. So same thing. I was like, I want to learn how money works. I went down this path of becoming a financial planner and then eventually going to get my certified financial planning designation, which I stopped doing. I didn't actually get that because I learned probably just like you, like there's so many different ways for Wall Street to make money. And really it depends on, okay, we're just going to sell products to whoever we can. We're going to take fees regardless if the market goes up, the market goes down, we're still going to make our money. And I just did not like that. It did not resonate with me at all. So I'm really happy to have you here on this call. And yeah, I love that idea of sharing your passive income report. So, there was a question that you guys posed me or put into the intake form here for the call, which was how you grew your passive income. I believe it was from $2,500 a month when you got going on this to over $50K per month in less than 2 years. And this is passive income, right? So I really want to dive into that. I want to dive into all the different things you guys do because it sounds like it aligns perfectly with what I do and what we do over at our Mastermind Investment Club as well. So why did you go down this path of trying to create passive income for yourself? Or I should say, what age did you start doing that? And how did you get to $50K a month in less than 2 years?
Yeah. Well, when you read books like Robert Kiyosaki's Cash Flow Quadrant, and you understand that the E and the S quadrant are working for money, and S quadrant working hard for money, which is where I was basically as an investment advisor at that point in time. I wanted to figure out how to get to the right side. I wanted to be a business owner. I wanted to be a professional investor, but I didn't know how. And I just started applying that to my investment. My I also have 4 kids, and my time is not my time when my business controls it. And I wanted to be able to truly do what I wanted to whenever I wanted to, but I wasn't at that ability at that time because I'd become successful in the eyes of the world, meaning I had a higher income. But if I didn't go to work, that income ceased to exist. And I had not done a really good job of investing money that was paying me when I wasn't working. And so that's what passive income was intriguing to me. I don't know about most people. I think when you think about the idea of that you can actually have something coming in every single month, regardless if you're going to work, that's free. And that creates a lot of opportunity. And I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I have no delusion about stopping work and going and sitting on a beach, 10 hours a day for the rest of my life. Like I would go stir crazy. That's just, I want to be building things. But I think the problem that most entrepreneurs face is that you get in this dilemma of build, burn, and start again, right? And because as the businesses we start running start becoming more successful, we start losing that kind of that risk involvement that we had in the business. And so we decided to go to create something new in order to basically generate that risk, assessment inside of us. And I was like, man, I may do that, but I need to build something on the side. So that's what kind of the start to building passive income. I will say that, our podcast we run gave me a lot of exposure to deals, Jeff, that I'd never had heard of before. The traditional things of buying single family rental properties. And I tried that early on. It didn't resonate with me. I didn't know why until later on I discovered this thing that we now coined the investor DNA, that it just wasn't aligned with who I am. And I kind of wanted a more influential, hands-on approach type of opportunity, and that wasn't it. And as we started like uncovering opportunities, and our kind of gifting in the world is taking our business acumen and applying it to investment. So we run operational investment companies, right? Like, so we hire operators, we build systems and processes, we manage those people inside of them, and it produces cash flow that I don't have to go work in. That's how we got from, very little income to a pretty decent amount over a really short period of time.
I love that. And, again, lots of alignment here. Yeah, I'm a good operator, right? When it comes down to it, I used to love operating the business and being in it. And I still have a hard time stepping back from certain things. But as the business owner, you realize you become the bottleneck. If you are, the know-it-all, so to speak, or the guy wearing all the hats, you become that bottleneck. And so you can never create that passive income. You can never really break free. And I think that's what a lot of people resonate with on this podcast. They love listening to these strategies that can go from being the active earner to the passive investor. So talk to us about, what do you even mean by that investor DNA? What is that?
Yeah, most everyone's taken some level of a personality assessment, whether it's Colby or Enneagram or Culture Index or DISC or Myers-Briggs. We have a way that we see the world, right? And then we have a way in which we operate within that world. And sometimes it aligns with who we are. The more alignment we have, the more joy and results we create. Well, that's true in investing, right? When you were going through trying to become a certified financial planner like I was, we were taught risk assessment was, take the, age 100, divide, subtract out how old you are. And that's the percentage that needs to be in stocks and bonds. Like there was like this stupid risk assessment. And, like, do you like this or do you like that? Well, I tried early on investing in single family rental property because I had buddies who had hundreds and hundreds of properties that were very successful. And I thought, well, don't reinvent the wheel. Just do what they do, right? And I was like, I hate this. This sucks. It didn't matter that they were producing a couple $100s a month a piece and income. I couldn't do anything with them because they were remote. They were several, hours away from me. So it wasn't like I could get on Facebook. I could tell somebody to go rent there or whatever. I couldn't change the outcome. And as a result, I didn't invest a whole lot more. I really just kind of sat on my hands, started stacking cash, which wasn't bad to have cash, but I wasn't investing. And I heard this podcast episode by Tom Wheelwright. I don't know if he's a pretty famous CPA to Robert Kiyosaki. And he was talking with the owner of Colby. And they were talking about how whenever he, as a CPA, has business owners that come to him and want to invest in multifamily and other things, he'll have them do this Colby assessment to understand how they will see it. And I thought, that's fascinating. I want to do that. And I went to Colby and they were like, no, it's going to cost $50 per person that you want to send through this. And I was like, well, if I want to send 1,000 people through there this year, what would be my discount? And they're like, 0. It's going to be $50. So we actually worked out an arrangement with DIS, the personality assessment that, kind of talks about drivers, influencers, people who are steady, kind of conscientious, and then the C, the analyticals. And they were actually working with us to build out an assessment from an investor mindset. And so the investor DNA is taking this DISC assessment, right? So I'm an ID, influencer, driver, and taking that and then pairing it with different investment opportunities out there and talking about what's the pros, the cons, and the key factors from your personality of how you're going to see that deal. So whether I'm looking at a multifamily project, I'm looking at a franchise, I'm looking at doing, private lending. I mean, whatever it is, how will my influencer driver profile see what would be the pros? And then just the opposite, what would be the cons? What would be the things that I wouldn't like because of my profile? That, when we started putting that together and we took all of these interviews, I mean, we've done 650 interviews or whatever over the last 8 years on our podcast. We took all of those experts and we started putting that data in there. It created this amazing visual that allowed us to narrow the wide world of thousands of investments down to a couple based upon who we are. So we get the most enjoyment. So that's really how I went from 0 to, roughly close to 0 to 50,000 is I started investing in things that align with who I was. So I enjoyed it more. So I put more money in it, put more effort into it, which then just sped up its growth.
So I got to ask then, what were those things for you? Like, what is your investor DNA? What is the thing that really drives you from an investment standpoint?
Yeah, so it's definitely influence, it's hands-on, like not being involved in the business day to day. That wouldn't be passive. But like, I'll give you examples. So one of the first things we did, we took a long-term rental property we had, and we turned it into a short-term rental property. And we had interviewed a lot of people in the short-term rental space and thought, oh, that's interesting, right? I'm an I profile, like I'm an influencer, I like talk about stuff. So having stuff on Airbnb and being able to post it on my Facebook, company websites, whatever it may be, that was kind of intriguing. But I'm also low hands-on, like meaning like I don't want to be the one that does the actual thing. So it was like, how do we turn this into a business? Well, you can't buy one property and turn it into a business. Like there's no way to make money in that. So my business partner and I said, okay, in order for us to hire someone full-time to be an operator and scale this, what would we have to do? We'd have to get to 15 units. So what did we do? We got to 25 units in less than 14 months. And we hired somebody, we trained them, like we gave them, we networked with all the greatest people in the world in different assets. We found the greatest operators in the short-term rental space. We paid $35,000 to send him through a course. Then we paid him a salary to run it. Then we gave him a profit share on top of that. And he scaled that with our capital at a really rapid rate. So that was one of the very first things. I liked it because when people were coming to Birmingham, that's where I am in the world, Birmingham, Alabama, I could say, go to wakeupinbirmingham.com. And if you're staying here, whether it's for a kid's ball game or you're traveling to one of the hospitals or for work, we've got, a unit that fits you. If your friend or family member, has a fire, flood, something that happens, tornadoes here in the South all the time, and they're out of their house, send them to our website. We're happy to take care of them. So I was able through seconds on Instagram or Facebook to put a post out there that could influence the business. And on a weekly basis, I could meet with our operator and have an hour conversation about marketing, management, what's going on, and be gone. And so he spent all of his time. I haven't answered the first question on Airbnb. I don't know, how to restock anything, none of that stuff. But what I could influence and help, the outcome be increased. And that was like a huge first start for me.
That's awesome. Again, I really love hearing this because I'm seeing myself and what you had to talk about. Like one of the things I realized about myself is that I love doing some work, right? I don't like doing all the work, all the details, but what I really like doing is architecting something and putting the strategies together and putting the systems together. And even talking about, okay, what should the operational plan be and how do you do this job? But what I found, and the reason why is, if you're familiar with the Y operating system based off of Simon Sinek's work, I'm a better way person. Like I'm always trying to find a better way to do something, and I like to master it, and then I like to make it easier for other people. And so I really like figuring out something that's pretty complex and then building the system around it. But then I don't like running the system. I absolutely hate running the system. Like, no, I already built it. I already did it. You go run the system, right? And it sounds like you're very similar in that route. It's like, okay, let's go find something we like to influence and we like to be a part of. We don't want to do the day-to-day work with it, right? It's like, I don't want to be the one having to deal with the accounting and the finance and the this and that, and dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's on an ongoing basis. But I do want to make sure it's done properly in the first place. So it's going to generate, the income or the input turns into a great outcome, right?
Yeah. So we had a podcast guest come on. His name is Mark Podolsky. I don't know if you've been introduced to him yet by our mutual friend Jonathan yet, but he runs a company called The Land Geek. And we'd had him on our podcast, and he was talking about how he's buying these little remote vacant raw lots across the U.S. and turn around and is selling them owner finance on terms to people who couldn't go get a bank loan for these things. I'm talking about like buying a property for $2,000, turn around and selling it for $10,000, like a couple $100 down, a couple $100 a month for the next 6-7 years. And I was like, that's kind of interesting. And I looked after a year of having him on the podcast. He was the number one guest, like downloaded episode. I thought, oh, we should have him back on. So we did, Jeff. And of course, I'm leaning in and I'm like hearing what he's talking about. I'm like, this is fascinating. I love this idea. It's a laptop lifestyle. You can operate this. Nobody sees your face. You're kind of wheeling and dealing. You're buying property from people who want to get rid of it. I related, like I got junk in my garage that's worth something, but it's not worth anything to me. But I don't, I'm not going to go and post it on Facebook kind of thing. And that's what I was seeing at these like little raw parcels of land all over the U.S. And then I thought, man, this is amazing, but I don't want to do it, right? Like this would be a fantastic business if we can only get someone to operate it. And so that's what my business partner and I set out to do is figure out how do we help, how do we build a business where we can like get all the team members in there and have it run efficiently as possible. So we ended up partnering with one of the top people in the world in that space. And every single month, that business produces over $30-something thousand a month in passive income for us. And it's just been this fantastic thing. Well, I get to talk about it. I'm getting to talk about it right now. So it's fueling my investor DNA. Right? It's something that is interesting. It's unique. People are like, how do you make money on raw land? Like they're thinking that you're going into like downtown Seattle and trying to buy a $5 million property and turn around and flip it for $6 million. No, like none of that, right? Like nobody's wanting to buy the land that I'm buying, but then there's somebody wanting to buy it on the back end that didn't even know it was possible. Because I put it on Facebook. We put it on Craigslist. I say I should be saying we because I am the loosest we in this deal. I haven't sold the first piece of property. I've been on a handful of calls, and that was early on, so I learned the business. But those are the kind of things that fuel my investor DNA.
Before continuing, please subscribe and share this video to help us reach more people and stay notified of our latest releases. Now, let's continue watching and learning.
Yeah, I love that. And I know you said this, that you get guests on your podcast like I do that come up with some probably crazy harebrained ideas you never thought about, right? Like land banking, for example, that I've heard from some people. You hear about things like infinite banking and private placement life insurance. I learned about this thing years and years ago, which was life settlements, being able to buy people's life insurance. It's like there's so many things out there. And I think that, I know, I'm curious about your thoughts. The people that I work with, they're high income earners. Sometimes they're retirees that have a nice big nest egg, and they just feel like they've sort of lost purpose and that their money doesn't have any sort of real purpose behind it. And they want to have, they know that their income's taken care of, their monthly nut is taken care of, so to speak, their lifestyle's taken care of, but they want to be able to do something more aside from, they're not quite the, Warren Buffett level where they're just giving all their money away. They want to get to this point where their money still earns, but it also does good at the same time. It sounds like that's something that probably resonates with you too. I'm just curious if you're hearing the same thing from your guys' clients.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Once people have gotten past the basic necessities of life, food, water, shelter, right? They get relationships and all that stuff. They move up to the top. Then, they're kind of that self-actualization moment where they want to give, they want to do good, they want to figure out how that every dollar that they put to work can help more than just themselves. And I love opportunities when there's that win-win-win, right? Like everybody's able to benefit. And I know the project that you guys are involved in with Patriot Growth Capital, I'm a huge fan of what you're doing and how you're able to change the financial bloodlines of families because of being able to take you guys' interest level and understanding of business and connecting it with veterans. I mean, what a beautiful way to be able to invest. I think so many people are so thankful for the service that you and others have put to our country that we get to have a world so great that we can even argue about how great it is, right? And that becomes the thing. The most divisive comment, sentence in our world right now is "Make America Great Again." Like we're talking about greatness. So I think that that's beautiful. I think there's an opportunity there, and yes, I love it when I see investors that are doing that. And I have a buddy of mine that has moved his $150 million investment company to a bank that only does business in a certain way, that none of the dollars are going to projects and things that he knows that misalign with who he is. I think that that's what we should be able to do. Like we should be able to use our dollars to do the things that we feel called for them to do. And when I see people in our space that invest in projects where buddies that are doing creative finance deals where they're able to, help families that otherwise couldn't go borrow money from a bank in the traditional means. They can help them get into properties and create opportunities. And I have buddies who own multifamily apartment complexes, and they put in learning programs and putting some nursery opportunities for underprivileged families in there who are struggling to figure out how do they go to work and take care of the kids, and they're putting in programs to teach them about finance. And like that's the beauty of what the best way to help people, right, is to teach them to fish, not to just give them fish. And I think that's what you're saying to some degree.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's spot on. Now, there's a couple questions I do want to ask you about here because it sounds like you have an opinion and maybe some really good expertise on this. There's a couple things that people come to us about and they talk about, and I have books on this subject, and a lot of people still don't believe they even exist. And I'm curious what your take is on things like infinite banking. And you don't have to go into all the details of that. We'll have unless you really want to, but yeah, do you guys use or have you ever seen infinite banking? And is that a concept that you even talk to people about?
Yeah, that is. I wouldn't be on the conversation with you right now without infinite banking. So, Jeff, I was in 2008. The market had crashed, right? My wife had just opened her dental practice December 28th of 2008. Great time to open up business. And my father-in-law, who was my largest investment client at the time, we had sold all the stock that he had through different stop losses as the market was crashing. And I would talk to him on a regular basis, and he had, multiple seven figures and basically cash. And he's asking me, "Russ, what are we going to do with my money?" And Jeff, I had no idea. Like I was scared. Everybody in the firm I was with was scared. Nobody understood why the market had lost 40%. And even worse, didn't know what would keep it from happening again. And so I go to this conference, January of 2009, and it's 400 or 500 CFPs, CPAs, financial advisors, insurance professionals at this event. And there's multiple different speakers, but there was this one older guy who's in his mid-70s, he's an economist. His name was Nelson Nash. And he's talking on stage about this idea of becoming your own banker. And to be honest, I kind of was rolling my eyes at first because they mentioned the word whole life insurance. And no respectable investment advisor would have ever talked about whole life insurance. And so I was this has got to be the
tagline when I was a financial planner was invest in term life, buy a term and invest the difference, right?
Exactly right.
But who does that?
I would say back in those days, the only persons that would use whole life insurance were too stupid to pass the securities exam. Otherwise, they would have been using other instruments to help their clients. Well, we went to a break and he was doing this breakout. We had a choice to go to multiple different breakouts. And I was like, what do I have to lose? Most of my clients are down a ton of money at this point. What else do I have to lose? So I went and sat in this hour breakout session. And they talked about just some simple ways that this concept worked. And I thought, this is too good to be true. This is a lie, but I don't know why it's a lie. Why don't I just read this book? He had this book, it's 85 pages long or so. And that was the last day. So I paid $20 for his book or whatever. I get on a flight later that afternoon from Orlando. I fly back to Birmingham, couple hour flight, and I read this 85, 90 page book at the time. And I flip it over, Jeff. And the most crazy thing, to me, I think this is just God's providence, but I flip it over and on the back, it had his name, had his phone number, his true cell phone number, by the way, which is crazy. I would never put my phone number in anything, much less a book, and his address. And his address said Rocky Ridge Road, Birmingham, Alabama. And I thought, wow, that must be a sign. Yeah. And so I made it my purpose for the rest of that year to understand that book inside and out. And I got to visit with him. He lived for another 10 years and became a personal mentor to me. He taught me a lot about money and the way to think about money that I never had considered. We're taught in the financial advisory world products, right? We're not taught, people think about cars, like it's really the driver, not the car. And we were taught cars and like how to soup up the cars and all the stuff. And he taught you how to think and what the value of, the biggest obstacle to becoming financially free is lack of access to cash and not understanding, the actors in the play and what's happening. And as a result of that, that's what led me out of the financial advisory world. And that's what led me to stacking cash. When I mentioned, I wasn't investing after, doing those couple of real estate deals because they weren't performing well. I was stacking, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars every year into cash value life insurance. It was crazy. And the first deal I did, this whole becoming your own banker strategy, my father-in-law took over my wife's dental practice loan of over $700,000 using life insurance, insured her life, and had her paying him back the same amount of money that she was paying Bank of America, the dental lender, which was like 8.5%, almost 9% at the time, which then got his money at work. It created him in this mindset of lending and creating capital in an untraditional way. And I mean, our family has just, used this in so many different ways. So all of these assets that we talk about, if you ever watch our passive income report, we actually tell you exactly how much we spent, but 100% of those dollars have been borrowed against life insurance cash values. So yes, I'm a huge proponent of it because I've seen how it transformed my life, our family's life, and from using it, not just selling it, right? Like people make money selling life insurance, of course, and we've made lots of money selling life insurance. But our client base uses it as a tool to buy in assets to produce passive income.
Absolutely, man. It's such an incredible tool. And again, most people have no clue what it is. And like you said, they hear this whole value life insurance, like, what in the world? I'm not going to do any of that stuff. But you said something in there that I think is really important. We know cash is king, but you said I'm stacking cash, right? And the biggest obstacle to financial freedom is not having access to cash.
True.
Right? That's what you said. So walk me through, how do you guys help people understand this concept of getting to financial freedom, which we covered earlier, is your passive income exceeds all of your monthly expenses, so you can actually live without having to work. So walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah. So if you think of that's the summit, right? Is it Mount Hood? Is that the nearest?
I'm about 30 minutes from Mount Rainier, the biggest mountain in Washington.
Mount Rainier. I'm sorry. Yes, Mount Hood, Mount Rainier, and is over there. So if you're thinking of passive income exceeding monthly expenses as the summit of Mount Rainier, right? That's what people think, and they think, "Oh crap." We talk about first step. You got to get to base camp, right? You got to get yourself up there, and that's no easy feat in and of itself. And so we walk people through what we call a passive income operating system. How do we build the operating systems that we can actually then start onboarding all of these other things? Most people are running their lives without operating systems, like having an iPhone without iOS on it. And so we're teaching people, like, how do you, stop directing dollars into accounts that you can't access the money? I mean, the typical person out there is investing money in a 401k or IRA. And it's because their accountants have told them that this is the cheap way to reduce your taxes this year. But they've never considered the cost of it. They've never considered how much time they're postponing their ability to get to financial freedom, because every dollar that goes in the account that doesn't produce a passive income, that doesn't reduce a monthly expense, is getting you further from that goal of financial freedom, further from getting to the summit of Mount Rainier. You're walking in the opposite direction. And so what we do is give them frameworks. We help them understand where are their dollars being deployed that are not giving them more of what they want, actually giving them less. And that's the passive income operating system at work. So when they do that, they start setting that up, then they ask that question. Hey, I got all this cash. Then what am I supposed to do with it? Right? And then we say, okay, well, let's walk through the framework. And that's where infinite banking comes into play for a lot of people. And then we start saying, okay, now we got cash. What are we going to do? How are we going to get to the top of that mountain? We've got to be a skilled climber, right? We got to know how to climb this investment mountain. And, the people start making investment decisions. They lose once or twice early on, and then they quit. They assume, oh, I'm not qualified. I just need to leave it to all the professionals. And we say, no, the reason you probably fail is because you didn't have investor buy box. You didn't have this investor DNA. You're not equipped yourself. You're not seeing enough deals. You saw one deal and invested in a deal, right? That's what I would do. See a deal, invest in a deal. Or if you're super analytical, right? Your C on the DISC profile, you want to see 1,000 deals. You can't see enough. You get paralyzed by the analytics. We say, okay, but we have to come up with a number that we're going to be comfortable seeing 10 deals, 15 deals, and then make a decision. We actually built what we call a passive income lab. It's a 12-week program where people go through and they get their first $500 a month of passive income guaranteed by the end of it, or we continue to work with them for free. And part of it is like teaching them how to do due diligence on deals. Like, this is scary paperwork. You guys, when people invest with people, they see these 100-page documents, PPM, and all this legal leagues that they've never been able to read. So we give them tools to how to analyze that. We have attorneys come in and teach them how to ask the greatest question. Greatest question. I'll give you this is my favorite one. About all times, if I invest in any project, I start off with this. It's the iceberg question for every investment deal is, tell me how I lose all my money. And whatever they say next, I'm going to ask a question based upon that. I mean, that's the iceberg question. And we just teach people how to do that. So that's kind of getting you that next step. And then now you can start stacking, right? Now we find some of our investors are going to exceed and get to that pace faster. Once they become expert investors, a lot of them will start becoming independent capital aggregators where they start raising capital. They build their own funds to the investments they're already doing because, they're an optometrist. They become successful. They become financially free. And all these other, doctor buddies are there. It's like, how are you doing all that? But they don't want to take the time to go through all the things that person did. And they say, well, can I just invest with you or alongside of you? And so there's just these different tiers in which people go through to ultimately achieve it. And it's depending on your time frame. Like, how fast do you want to get there? And are the decisions you make in getting you closer to or further from?
Russ, that's awesome, man. And we go into this all day long. I love this stuff because you're speaking my language right here, right? Which is, we have this thing called the DVRS method of investing, and D stands for deal flow. Very first thing, because if you only see one deal, guess what? It's the best deal ever because everybody loves to pitch their deal. It sounds like they're amazing, but once you see 1,000 deals, you're like, oh man, okay, maybe that first one was crap. You finally start to realize it. And number 2 is vetting, right? How do you vet the deal? So you're right there in line with everything we talk about. So I love this. We are about at time here, but before we wrap up here, Russ, I want to ask you one question. And that is, knowing everything you know now, all the success you've had, all the heartache you've had with being an entrepreneur, going through all this stuff, all the ups and downs. If you can go back in time to yourself when, your former self, when you were getting into this world, what's one piece of advice you'd love to be able to go back and give yourself?
Yeah. Be quicker to go find mentors, right? Like the path to accelerate is always being in the right rooms. Our mutual buddy, Jonathan Bates, says this. I love it. He said, you're in the right room is if you come up and I bring you a deal, Jeff, and I'm like telling you about my deal and you put your arm around me, you go, man, Russ, that's cute. I can understand why you think that's a good deal. But based upon where I am, where I've obtained, and what I see that's possible, let me show you, right? Like, when your daily aspirations of the people you're hanging out with are your goals, right? Like when they're accomplishing that's their daily accomplishment, and your aspirations to get there, like that's when you're in the right room. So having mentors is the thing that I wish I would have spent a lot more money really quickly and found those people in my life, because I can point to a handful of people, Nelson Nash was one of them, that have just accelerated my progress and path to getting to where I am. And hopefully, again, the next path is the teacher always learns more than the student. So who are you pouring into? Who are you teaching? Right? Like teaching creates mastery. A lot of people want to go learn information. Learning is knowledge, but knowledge is not understanding. Experience is understanding, right? I'm sure you did a lot of stuff in the military that you may have heard about, you may have even read about, but until you did it, you didn't understand it. And that's the same true, in finance. I can read, I can listen to podcasts, I can have a lot of knowledge, but until I actually go do it, I won't have understanding of it. And as fast as you can get understanding and experience, then you can actually start teaching and creating mastery.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's so important too, right? We actually have videos and talks about, okay, what would you do with your first $10,000 as an investment? Number one thing I always say is invest in yourself, right? You got to get the education. And because once you get the education, then you can figure out who the mentors are, right? Got to make sure you choose the right mentors too. So I love that.
Right.
Russ, thanks so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. How do people learn a little bit more about you and get access to all the stuff you guys have?
Yeah, I'd point them to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/angel investors. We created a page just for this podcast that give you access to our community, to quiz, to anything that we're doing. We built a community that has almost 10,000 people in it now, and it's people just focused on becoming financially free. To join that community is free. So it's a great avenue. I think that could be the tip of the iceberg for you, and to diving deeper into what we're up to.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that, Russ. I really appreciate that. We'll make sure we get all those links in the show notes, as well as access to Russ and his company there, Wealth Without Wall Street. Really excited about everything that you guys have to offer. Russ, it's been a great interview. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So if you guys have loved this episode, by all means, like, subscribe, and share. And we'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.